Welcome to the Voice of Supply Chain. I am Katherine McCleery. I am so excited to see you all here for this episode. This is a big one, and probably one of the biggest guests that we've had on this show. She's someone that you probably already know, Sheri Hinish. She's the founder of Supply Chain Revolution Global. She's the voice behind the brand we all know and love, Supply Chain Queen. And she's one of the most recognized platforms in supply chain today. She's advised global enterprises. She has shaped the conversations around sustainability and technology. And her work sits at an intersection of supply chain that has evolved her career, but it's also helped us evolve supply chain and sustainability as a whole. And so I'm so excited to bring her on this show and dig a little bit deeper into the person behind the brand. Sheri, welcome.
Hello.
So glad to have you here.
It is such a pleasure to join, and shout out to Kathy, who's in the background. I've known Kathy for many years, and it's also a privilege to join folks from New Jersey or Rutgers who may be listening today. So shout out to all the Rutgers alumni.
We usually have a few people from New Jersey, the faithfuls that are showing up, and as we should for ISM New Jersey, who sponsors this show. We usually have a few people coming through. So if you are joining, please say hi. We love to acknowledge you, and as well as if you have questions or comments throughout, we'll make sure that we get those answered. And I just have to take note here before we get going, how amazing your background is. And I see the word rebel behind you.
Yes.
And I have a feeling we're going to get to know a little bit more about the rebel part of you.
Yes, hopefully. Although I have to tell you, I don't think I had ever shared with anyone in a professional context that when I was a little girl, I wanted to be the first female president of the United States. So you really pull out things in people, maybe even that I had forgotten. So I'm super looking forward to our discussion today.
Well, I can't believe that. First of all, I love that, and I can't believe that. It's just one of the things that I always want to know about whoever I'm interviewing for this, because sometimes you find really interesting threads of who you wanted to be when you were little, and then there's some evolution of that is so apparent as you grow up. So and we have something in common. I also wanted to be the president. I wanted to be the president and a fashion designer.
Nice.
And now I'm a product marketer.
There's some correlation there.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we're going to jump right into it. And I didn't prep you for my first question. However, if you've watched any other episodes in the last few months, you may know what this first question is. I want to know how you want to change the world.
Oh, that's a big question. So I think I probably would have answered this slightly differently 5 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago. I think what's happening in the world right now, and without getting political, but this is politically charged, obviously, is that I would love to see a world where moral responsibility becomes second nature to large corporate enterprises, where governments empower communities and societies for themes like equity and creating the type of economy where folks can raise their family and do better than they did or their parents did. And those sorts of themes around reshaping how economies and markets run and operate, how communities can thrive, those are huge paradigm shifts. It takes nonprofit, government, corporates, a lot of policy change, and you don't have to go very far. When you turn on your TV, if you're living in the US right now, you can see there are a lot of geopolitical shifts. And we wake up and we might be living in a different time than we would like to. And so part of the thing that I'm committed to right now is really helping change the world at that intersection with those key stakeholders, but also thinking about how do we regenerate the world? How do we not just, continue on this business as usual path, but how do we really create, redesign, reimagine something that we can all be proud of, where we can all participate and thrive? And I think supply chains are right at the center of that.
It is. And I think we're going to dig into this a little bit more today, but that is a really incredible benefit of getting into supply chain. We've had this kind of message with a few other guests on this show. For those that are considering supply chain, just know that you get to help shape the future in a way that a lot of other careers and segments of business won't have as much impact and opportunity to do that. And we're I think supply chain, procurement, all of these sourcing sectors have grown in visibility and awareness to the rest of like the business and the enterprise. And I love to see it. There's just so much more that people are learning about supply chain now, post-pandemic, which is when I happened to learn about you, was during the 2020 year of madness.
The word we don't say.
Yeah, COVID.
Mm-hmm. You know what's interesting is I've had the honor and privilege of sitting at some pretty large tables and being included in forums where these decisions are shaping the future of work, the future of enterprise, the future of sustainability in the world we share. And for the past 2 years, there was not a single room. It could be COP, Conference of Parties. It could be New York Climate Week, London Climate Week. All of these forums, supply chain was mentioned in every single room. So if you're in supply chain, operations, procurement, logistics, all the things that supply chain means, this is really your moment of impact. This is your moment to shine.
Great message. Love that. Well, we will definitely touch on that quite a bit more. I think before we get into the deep, supply chain chat, I want to know about little Sheri, young Sheri, who you were as a kid.
Sheri was little too. I'm still the size of a hobbit. For those of you who don't know, I'm 4'11". So little Sheri was very little.
Okay, well, your online presence gives you a 5'9" stature.
Thank you.
All I can say.
Thank you. I was really hoping to reach 5 feet. I have a 12-year-old daughter who is literally my height now. So yeah.
So what shaped you? So when we go back to the young Sheri who wanted to be the first female president of the United States, tell me about that little girl.
That little girl was very shy, believe it or not. Like I wasn't as outspoken as I am now. I grew up with a deep connection to God and nature. So for a large part of my childhood, I was actually raised by my maternal grandparents. And they were volunteers in our church. So I was in church probably 5 out of 7 days out of the week. My grandmother was a farmer. I came from a long line of farmers actually on both sides of my family. So I always was gardening and outside and playing in soil. And I just had a very deep responsibility as a steward in the community. Like I was connected to people and things that were much larger than my own presence on earth. But then also this marriage of, whatever God the creator, the universe, and nature are very central to my existence as a child. And so I think that really was foundational. Also, we didn't have much money. So when people talk about circularity and zero waste, that was a way of life because we didn't have much. So we really had to be scrappy and make the most of what we had. So there was a lot of downcycling, upcycling, never let food go to waste, ate vegetarian more often than not. And that also shaped me, further along in my own personal journey as an ethical vegan and now a pescatarian.
What were some of your favorite things that you ate vegetarian when you were a kid?
Succotash.
Yeah.
I love cooked cabbage and kale. I love like a good summer salad, like something crispy and citrusy. Um, and I love like really good, like sweet corn on the cob, white corn, corn on the cob, which if you're from the Eastern Shore, you know what I mean. And also watermelon. I love watermelon in the summertime. Like those were the key things I remember eating as a child. And it was like incredible when we were able to, have those sorts of treats in our week.
And what did you have on the farm? Was it a crop farm or a different kind of farm?
I didn't grow up on a farm.
Oh, it was your grandmother.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wish I did. That's my secret. Like I just came back from Mexico with my husband, celebrating 15 years. And while we were there, he was like, well, what does life look like for us after the kids are out of the house and in college, or maybe not in college, whatever they do when they're not physically with us. And I was like, let's start a homestead. Like, let's just be farmers and live a quiet, peaceful life nestled somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And he was not at all interested. So I would love to be a farmer. Unfortunately, my partner is not as passionate about the idea.
I love the idea and the intention. I would struggle with the farming part of it, but if I could have land and if I could rescue all the dogs and cats, that's what I would do.
Yes.
That would be me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when you were young and you had this vision of what you wanted for yourself, you wanted, to be the first president, female president. You had kind of these big ideas and big dreams for yourself. What did the adults around you, so your grandmother and other mentors, what did they expect you to become? What was it different, or was it encouraged for you to have these big dreams?
This is a really controversial question. So hopefully my father does not Google and find this chat. So you have to understand that I was the first woman on my father's side to eventually go to university. And neither one of my parents went to university. So these big dreams that I had, these grandiose visions, were often met with, you're a smart girl, you have straight A's, you can focus on academics, but really, and some of it was cultural, by 24, 25, you should be married, you should marry well. And your role is in the home. In fact, I distinctly remember I just had Raymoncito, who is now 11. And I remember right after he was born, I said, Dad, I'm going to get a master's degree, my first master's degree. And he was like, why the hell would you do that? You have a wonderful husband. You guys are doing okay. Why would you go back to school? You don't need another degree. You already have one. The box has been checked. So I grew up with a lot of that. Even though I had a vision for myself for many, many years, far into adulthood, I kind of let what was happening around me, family, close friends of family, create limitations on my vision and what I ultimately wanted for myself and my family, and creating that sort of generational opportunity. I'm not going to say generational wealth, but the access that I didn't have, I wanted that for my daughter. I want that for my sons. And so it is often the people closest to you who may not be as supportive in practice. In theory, they are, but not necessarily in practice. So that little girl, that little Sheri, had big dreams. And of course, my aunties and my grandmothers were all like, yes, dream as big as you want. We're breathing the universe of opportunities into you. You have to do this for us. Break the generational cycle. But a lot of men in my life who have now amended their opinions, I have to say they weren't supportive.
Well, and in spite of all of that, you have become so much more, and it really is inspiring. As I was looking through your LinkedIn profile, the amount of education that you have pursued in your time is unreal. Like I went to like 3 years of college. I didn't even graduate, but I am, because I just wanted to work. Just wanted to work.
Yeah, that's cool too.
I could not get in my mind the idea of, oh, go back to school, go back and finish. Like that is inspiring to me. Like I sometimes I wonder what more I could have done, what more I could have become if I had done that. And you have so many degrees from very prestigious schools. And so it's, to me, that tells me that there is so much inner drive,
Yeah.
that motivation. And probably I would love to think, and you can confirm, that the women in your family helped spark that fire for you.
Absolutely. I am, because they have been a source of inspiration, and also, everything in a lot of ways. Like I said, they really breathed the universe of opportunity and possibilities in me that maybe they didn't have the same, female empowerment. And that's also why I try and share that with others. With school's interesting because you can never be overdressed or overeducated. I believe that with every fiber of my being. I also know that for some people, structured and higher education is not their thing. I do really well in those environments. I like, you do this, 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 and this. Here's the outcome. After so many years or credit hours, this is your prize. I like that. I also can tell you, I've sat in a lot of rooms with people who have degrees from very prestigious universities, and the degree is a proxy. It does not mean that they are smarter than you, that they're more capable. And when you start to sit in some of those rooms, you're like, they're not all that. They may have had more access, and through that access, they have more muscle memory. They know how to, flex, respond. They know how to operate in those environments at those tables. But it doesn't mean that you aren't just as capable and just as ready as someone who's gone to whatever university you want to name.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think for people like me, I feel I'm much more adept for school now. Like I love to study. I love to research. That's like why I love product marketing.
You're great at it too, by the way.
Thank you. And if I had that same focus, 20 years ago, things might be different. But I gained my experience in real life lived environments in saying yes to opportunities that sounded scary and growing that way. And it's been an incredible journey to get where I'm at. And I do wish I'd finished school. I do. But there's so much to be said for when I look at the pursuit of education for you. That tells me a lot about who you are. Just the consistent consumption of knowledge and
Yeah.
wanting to grow and wanting to learn and taking action. That's what I see, is a lot of action in your timeline, whether it's education and jobs. You are opening the door for yourself every single time with whatever
I
you are
appreciate
pursuing.
that. I don't think it's just me, though. I think I have a personal supply chain and a professional community of people from, I mean, you can go as far back, let's just say 10 years. I really honor those connections and the people that have maybe opened a door that I didn't know was open, or put in a good word, or it might have even been like a casual introduction, on LinkedIn to someone. It really takes a supply chain. You have to have your own intentional supply chain. And when you pair that with what you highlighted, Katherine, drive, ability to follow through and execute, real passion and purpose in what you're doing, and love, I think that's how you go far. I would never take credit for the life that I've built. It's been an incredible community, an incredible partner, and a very supportive family. Yeah.
Just as humble as ever, and we appreciate that too. The supply chain queen doesn't have to always be humble, but I do want to know, and I don't know that I have all the answers as I did my research. What exactly in supply chain, what did you become well known for that gave you that title? And was it a title that somebody else gave you, or was that kind of just something that you claimed?
It was a nickname. I was actually Queen of the Rebels, believe it or not. So, again, I have existed in spaces not built for me, not made for me. I have occupied roles and been in rooms where I was either the youngest, the only woman, definitely not of the corporate archetype at the time, and a bit of a rebel. And I think part of the supply chain queen nickname was really being a great connector, someone who understood complex, interconnected challenges and was really good at finding the best in people and delivering transformative outcomes. And what that means is you have big, wicked problems. You need a lot of people to get along to get something that's high risk, high reward, and incredibly important to an organization across the line together. And so it started with, I don't have to belabor certain projects, but you can imagine like SAP implementations in school, just coming in where there were a lot of egos, right? And everyone has a PhD, and being able to really be a bridge for people where everyone had their shine moment and everyone knew that they were all connected to a greater purpose and outcome. And so that's really where the supply chain queen nickname was born. And I think we're going to get into this. This is a very embarrassing story. My husband is the one who, when I got rejected from a recruiter, I didn't get rejected technically, but the recruiter looked at my resume and she was like, "You're great. Your resume sucks, girl."
She gave you pointed feedback.
Yeah. And then I cried in my minivan for like 15 minutes, drove home, and my husband was waiting at the door, and he was like, you have to do something. Like, you have to start sharing your stories and all the incredible work you're doing on social media. And I was like, I had 110 connections on LinkedIn. I didn't own any other social media, literally.
Okay, and just to put this into perspective for everybody, what year was this?
This would have been 2014, 2015. So over a decade ago. Yeah.
Okay.
That was the pivot moment in my career.
Okay.
10 years. give or take a year.
And I think this is also an important thing to stop and recognize, is that a recruiter loved you in person, thought you were great, saw you on paper, and saw the disconnect of where is this great person among all of the, the resume. She's not standing out on paper like she does in person. And so like you took that home and you took that personally, right? And I took that personally.
I was in tears for a really long time. Yeah. I was in tears for a while. Yeah. So, you know what's interesting? We all go through this though. I think so. The unlock, now I can see it. Then I was just sort of, I was sad. I was disappointed. But the silver lining was that it made me realize I had believed, back to your earlier point, Katherine, all the things that people told me. You have to look a certain way, you have to talk a certain way, you have to dress a certain way, you have to be this person to be considered an executive. And actually, when I threw it out the window and I was like, screw this, I'm going to rebel on, I'm going to rebel forward, and I'm going to be my authentic self. That is when the shift happened for me in my career. And I started owning my story. It was a story of empowerment. And it was a story that I held autonomously. It wasn't the title that I had. It wasn't the employer who I worked for. It was mine. And I could do whatever I wanted with it. And that was the unlock from that difficult conversation with an executive recruiter who I have been racking my brain to remember what her name was. I would love, if you're watching this, I would love to buy you lunch and catch up with whoever you are.
Yeah, shout out to her.
Shout out, you are the one.
Wow, like such a pivotal moment, that fork in the road, right? When you're looking at like all the possibilities of time and space that were branching off from that moment, and the one that you took was incredible. Okay, so take us back to that moment. You go home, you're talking to your husband. He's like, you've got to figure out how to like brand yourself.
Yeah. We're sitting at the kitchen table. I can see it now. We don't have that table anymore. And I don't drink anymore. I don't drink coffee or alcohol, but at the time I loved a nice glass of wine in the evening to wind down. So he had a cold, crispy glass of Chardonnay with like the ice crystals on top. And he was like, here. And he was like, this is what you need to do. You need to open social media accounts, call yourself supply chain queen. And I was like, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Absolutely not.
You were like, I don't want to claim that. Like, I'm not, worthy or whatever.
I don't want to step into who I was becoming. I didn't want to step in and claim that space. And it had to do with this. I think it was always inside me, but you have to remember, I sat on the sidelines. I was kicking ass doing the work, but I felt uncomfortable taking credit or even receiving credit. And that wasn't just then. That was who I was for my entire life. And I don't think that we realize a lot of things that happen to us as children and a lot of the environment that we grow up in, it can truly shape who you are. And it is your responsibility to break those chains and to break all of those things that you've let define you. Because really, at the end of the day, it's here. It's here. It's within you. The universe is within you. And so in that moment, my husband hopped on Twitter, opened the account. I didn't even know how to tweet. I swear. I didn't know how to do anything. Hopped on Twitter, hopped on Instagram. He was like, you got to change your LinkedIn picture. So I literally cut out my head from our wedding album. It's so embarrassing. It's the only professional picture I had was our wedding. And that was my LinkedIn profile picture for a long time. It was my wedding picture, actually. I've forgotten that. Yeah.
Bring it back. I say, give us 30 days with that original cutout head picture. Yeah. I would love to see that little throwback.
Yeah. Yeah, I was young. I didn't have this, I didn't have this, I didn't have this, but um I honor I honor that moment because through our conversation, I think you can forget those things. And they're really magical shimmer moments in your life where it took courage, it took feeling extremely vulnerable, like starting to post and you're like, does this need to be peer reviewed? What do I post? Do I post a quote? Do I have a point of view? Do I have a point of view that anyone would actually be interested in reading? Is anyone going to like it? There are so many things that go through your mind. But at the end of the day, you just have to get started. You just have to do it.
Yeah, moving forward. You
Moving
just have to do it, and the more you do it, the more you're going to learn what works, what doesn't work. But I am curious. So when you're starting to step out, how long did it take you before you're like, okay, I'm going to call myself supply chain queen and we're going to brand this? Were you starting to post and then you were like, okay, I'm going to claim this? Or was it just from the get-go, I'm going to try this out as supply chain queen?
Yeah, so I think you're getting into registered trademark types of trademark, like making it official, like making it a business where you actually get paid to share a perspective and to shape various things. So that took time. When I started, I really just wanted to get the next job and get a job that I was super proud of and make more money.
Yeah. So
That's
was
how it
it like,
started really, but it changed because when you start posting, like I said, you connect with so many people on digital platforms. There were so many women that would reach out and be like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking the same thing. I'm so glad that there are other people out there who are going through this, who are talking about this openly. And I would always encourage those women to share their perspective because it's sort of like a force multiplier and you can amplify and sort of rage against the machine and the systems and the algorithms and turn the tide, I think, in a lot of gender bias that exists right now, especially in an age of AI. But it turned somehow. And I think it took about 2 years where I was like, a community is forming. Like this is bigger than just someone posting on social media. So it took about 2 years.
okay. And really what I was getting at is, were you, what were some of those early messages that started to resonate? Were you talking about supply chain? Were you talking about women in supply chain? What do you feel was kind of that trigger for you of like, okay, I'm going to keep going with this?
The themes were obviously sustainability. So I think at the time it was more wrapped around green value chain, optimization, efficiency. Sustainability wasn't what it is now, at least not in my view. I started to understand systems change about a year in, and I started talking about circularity. So I would say sustainability, circularity, and supply chain, that intersection, and then being a woman who operates in those spaces and wanting more, wanting equitable representation, wanting a voice at the table, not because I'm a woman, because I'm the most damn qualified person to be at that table. And so it wasn't a necessarily woman in supply chain feel. It was more, look, we're just as capable and qualified as our male counterparts. So that was a bit more edgy because
Yeah, at that time for sure.
at that time it was, and I remember there's a guy, Frederick, from B2B Consulting, and there were several moments, he's French, where he's like, we just love you because you're so feisty and fiery. You're very much like this, right? And it was special. So yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question, Katherine, but
You did, yeah. No, I think that I'm asking and I'm curious because when I became aware of you, it was 2020, and I was had a few years in procurement, tech, and was researching influencers and really trying to get a hold of like understanding of what are the topics people care about. and I listened to a podcast episode where you're talking about sustainability. And I think you were actually on someone else's podcast. I can't remember, but then it led me to yours, and I started listening to yours. And I thought, wow, like she's not just a brand, you know, because I had seen your name a few times. She was, you know, you were not just a brand. I remember hearing how much you cared and how much passion there was for sustainability. And we were in an inflection point in 2020, I believe, with sustainability. And so thinking about the time when you were starting to build, you know, your voice on LinkedIn a few years before that, going through COVID and pandemic and watching kind of that inflection point for the visibility of the topic of sustainability and the initiatives for sustainability. How do you think that has now evolved from that really, I think, peak point in my own visibility and awareness of sustainability within supply chain?
Yeah, so sustainability, just like supply chain, when you say that word, it could cover 20 domains topically. And I think with COVID, one of the key, most resonant points was that businesses can't succeed in societies that are failing. And so in the midst of health crisis, you don't have the ability to produce and manufacture goods. You don't have the ability to just, you know, make a decision with the snap of a finger, because I think people realize the physicality of supply chains, and no amount of technology certainly helps us get there faster, quicker, orchestrate with more decision intelligence. But at the end of the day, people are very much the backbone of global supply chains and global networks. And so in 2020, it was an interesting time. And I think that was probably, to your point, where I was ready. So I had this set up. I have a studio downstairs. It's technically my husband's, but I use it because his is far fancier than mine. Mine's like, you know, eBay camera, you know, like guerrilla style lighting, but it works. It works. I've had this microphone from the beginning. I never upgraded it. But I was ready, right? So I had a platform. I had the early credibility and trust with some key brands, and I had been paid for that work. And I could go live, and I could share, and I could do webinars. And so again, it was kind of like perfect timing, and sustainability was front of mind, but it was more, you know, we can no longer sustain business as usual in a linear economy with everything happening around us. So nature, biodiversity collapse, people are failing, businesses don't have the social license to operate. Their goals and their ambitions around sustainability are being questioned. They don't have access to the best talent if they aren't purpose driven, and they can't articulate what is their legacy. How do they want to be remembered in the world as a responsible steward? So it's kind of like all these things meshing and merging together in a time where the world was giving pause because this virus was running rampant. And you remember, like, we weren't going to work. We weren't seeing each other. I mean, I met people that year. It literally took me 5 years to meet them in person. I worked with people that I never even met. So you had to bridge trust, love, very human emotions in a human experience digitally, like way. And I think with certain folks, like, they just emote those sorts of things. I like to think I'm one of them.
You are.
Thank you.
You are.
But that was, you know, that ability to like communicate, connect, convene, and for people to walk away. That was when the supply chain revolution was born. For people to walk away in the moment of complete chaos and disarray with a feeling of hope and a feeling of there are other people on the end of this that give a damn about the world we live in and the world we're going to leave to our kids. That's it in a nutshell.
I think it was a forcing function for the community aspect, and it was probably very much needed. That community aspect, I really just exploded in that year, at least from my vantage point, because me, someone, a marketer in procurement tech and manufacturing a few years before, I didn't have a much awareness about supply chain until honestly, it was before 2020. I was in manufacturing in 2017, but very slow rise, and then all of a sudden it was quite an acceleration.
Yeah, supply chains power the world, and 40% of the world actually works in a supply chain. I think that's a global average. Depending on the geography or the region, that number can be quite high. But, supply chains are really the mechanism and operating model that connect all of us. There are other things that connect us too, like some of the love, purpose, all the beautiful words. But when you get down to it, I mean, what an incredibly magical thing that if I wanted a strawberry chapstick right now, I can order one and it would most likely be at my door in 24 hours. Not that that's sustainable, but it's totally possible. That's incredible.
It would have been really hard to convince me a few years back that would be possible now, that fast.
Yeah. They have within hour delivery windows. Again, another day, another topic. I have a point of view on that. Not sustainable. The me, consuming at all costs, mass consumption economy is not what we want to be as a human species. But I marvel at the ability for supply chains and people and technology to make that happen right now.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is a marvel for sure. And I'm thinking about, as you are growing into the supply chain queen and you are gaining your voice and getting speaking engagements and things like that, when did you realize that your voice, as it was starting to reach beyond your company and your direct LinkedIn contacts, when did you realize something was happening for you, and what actually changed for you? Like do you feel like that's when you kind of came into your like yourself and your power, is when your voice started reaching beyond the bounds that you thought were possible?
Absolutely. I think, if you asked me this question 8 years ago, I would have said the first time a big brand paid me to share, like when you actually get paid to do something. I don't have that view anymore. But that first time for me was Panasonic, and it was CES. Nice. There were a couple smaller things prior, but when you say, like, when it really clicked, like, holy crap, this could actually be what I do when I grow up. Although I'm still growing up now. It was that moment. It was with Panasonic, and Angela Davis. Shout out if you're listening. I'm giving you a big hug out in the ether, because she reached out to me, also a Jersey girl. And that was an incredible point of inflection too, where I figured, oh, wow, IBM was another. IBM has been very good to me. Jeanette Barlow, who was the head of product at the time. I did a lot of work. Katie Devlin, if you're listening. Those were two brands that gave me a shot. All women, all door openers, all female teams. The names escape me, but they were all women, covering and hugging other women and being a door opener. That was the moment where I also, at the time, a W-2 employee, started getting some friction with the side hustle. When you are visible online and you're being paid to keynote, or you're showing up in a video feed and Panasonic is sharing something that you've recorded, there's a bit of a WTF moment if you're existing within an employer organization and they're like, you work here. Why are you working for Panasonic? And I'm like, no. I have a professional brand that has a pending trademark. And they totally, at the time, didn't understand what professional brands did or how they operated. The word influencer now is a bit cringy, then was like tip of the spear for B2B marketing.
Right.
And so that has evolved, thank God. But going back, I think it was really the first time a big brand trusted me to share a perspective, which may not have been their own, and then consistently getting that handshake and callback, being able to turn a one-time event into a lasting partnership and create friendships with those people. They move on to other jobs. We all moved on to other jobs, right? But we stay in touch. We trust each other. And again, it's that community. We still honor each other, and we still stay connected even now beyond that 1-off transaction, which is super cool.
So at what point during all of this were you thinking, okay, you are championing sustainability and a lot of the underlying messages during that time? At one point were you thinking, all right, this is an interest in a topic I care about, and now I'm committing myself to this. This is now my thing.
Yeah, it was at Rutgers, actually, my first graduate degree, that program, Dr. Kevin Lyons at Rutgers University. I was taking a mini MBA as an independent elective, and I saw him give a very comprehensive point of view on the green value chain. And that in itself was not new to me, but he was breaking down very specific use cases that connected academia and local community context with sustainable innovation powered by supply chain. And so renewable energy projects, EV and solar charging stations where you take space that is available that's not being used, collecting waste streams as an input to another process. Like, there were all these use cases that he shared. It wasn't fiction. It wasn't a pilot. These were scalable things that were being done in the community, supported by ordinary folks like you and I, students, people who didn't have vast degrees and credentials in these spaces. They just showed up. They really cared about their community and making a difference, and they got it done. And so that was the moment. I think there's a video of it actually somewhere where I was like, today was amazing. I want to devote my entire life to sustainable supply chain. It was literally that day when I saw Dr. Kevin Lyons, and he's just an incredible guy.
Wow. Okay.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
You said he looks like Leonardo DiCaprio?
No, he's friends with him.
Oh, friends with. I was like, oh.
Friends. He doesn't look like Leonardo. You'll have to Google him. Yeah.
Okay, so there really was like a point in time. That's so cool. And now tell me about where you're at now, like, because we've gone through your journey a little bit, and also looking back, this earth connected girl,
yeah,
finding her way through supply chain and sustainability. You're living out that those values. And I have to say, it's really refreshing to hear about your upbringing and your story, and your care towards being a vegetarian and caring about earth and sustainability as a kid, and how it's actually carried into something valuable as an adult. Just side comment on that. I think that that is genuinely rare. And I love to see it. You're living out the values that you so deeply care about. But what I really want to know is what's in store this year for you as, supply chain queen, supply chain revolution. What do you have planned?
So Supply Chain Revolution Global is my S Corp LLC that I started a few years ago. And now I am making a living, as they say, in a few ways. The first is as a board member, supporting right now 3 boards. 2 of them haven't been announced yet, but that's really cool work. Management is very different from oversight. And so it's sort of giving the strategic advice, but not necessarily as the operator or practitioner executing on it, which is sometimes hard for me to separate because I love getting my hands dirty and I love getting involved, but it's also given me a space where I can take all these tidbits and different types of sector experience and client experience and really bring it to life in a super cool way. The other thing is senior and independent advisory. So I have a portfolio of clients who I love. And if they see this, thank you so much for continuing to give me a chance to serve you and your clients and your associates. It means a lot to me. I love that work. I don't have some of the same pressures that I had in other consulting jobs like IBM or EY, where I truly have free reign. I can co-create all of the, wild ideas supported by and anchored in value creation and really being able to connect with people in a one-to-one way. It makes my heart full and it brings me joy every day. The other is technology advisory. So I do support startups. There are a couple events. I wouldn't say a couple. There are probably 11 right now on docket for 2026. I have a small team that's now supporting those events. There's curated conversations around them. We have 4 podcast series planned for 2026. I have some fellows starting, and I'm so excited to share who those ladies are with the world. They are incredible. They are absolute rebels. And I'm so excited to really start expanding the team and scaling this business this year. So that's a lot.
Yeah, that is, I was about to say, this is no small feat. 11 events, just that alone sounds like a couple full-time jobs.
Yep. We are rocking and rolling. We're a 7-figure business right now. And it's been, again, just having the courage to say, this is what I want to commit my life to. I want to be client-centric. I want to make a difference in the world. And I want to stay true to the future where we can all thrive, and a future that we need. Look at what's happening around us. Like, when you've lived more years on this earth than you have left, you really start thinking about things differently. And that perspective it's an incredible blessing. It's an incredible blessing.
So the events and the speaking engagements and the podcast, what's your message that you're wanting to get out to the world this year?
You have to start now, and it's going to take all of us. I mean, there are forces at work that, again, we're not going to get political because I think Kathy's in the background like, Sheri. However, the time is now. We have
time is now.
Yeah. One thing I think, and again, some of the work that I can't talk about is really in the venture capital space. So making sure that we have the right financial flows and funding mechanisms for great innovation, great teams that maybe aren't being funded in the way that they need to scale, having access to corporates to pilot their innovation. Mm-hmm. Funding we haven't talked about in financial markets. That's really, really important. That's one of the critical things that I learned at EY. It's money, honey. You really, if you don't have funding, it's really hard to make. It's not impossible, but I think it's more challenging in the scale and the repeatability of some of the great innovation. For events, I'll be at a logistics events in Mexico City, March 17th through the 19th. I'll be at Supply Chain and Procurement Live in Chicago, April 21st and 22nd. If you're there, please say hi. And then there are a host of other events that I can't remember. I think Reuters in June 23rd, also in Chicago, Builders and Buyers in New York in April. It might be in Chicago. Again, I don't remember. Sustainability Live in New York Climate Week, all the New York Climate Week events. There are like 20 of them, but yes, super, super excited for this year. Oh, Green Biz in Arizona. Oh my gosh, that's February 17th through the 19th. We'll be there on the ground interviewing incredible leaders in this space who wake up and they have the same purpose in their heart to make a meaningful change in the world we share.
Are you going to be doing live like podcasts? And love that.
So I really want to take it back to like guerrilla style videos with the,
on the street.
Yeah, I know that polish is important, especially when you get into like more corporate branding, marketing, comms teams. Like they want to maintain a certain.
But you're a rebel.
But I love the person gets off the stage, or it's the quiet corner in the hallway, or it's after hours, everyone's just chilling and vibing, and it's like, what do you really think about what we talked about today? That is what I love, when people let their guard down and just let everything, all the vulnerable moments, all the things that they wish they could have said, maybe it came to them in hindsight, in that moment. And it's hard to do that if it feels super like produced. But just having your phone and saying, talk to me, what's on your mind? What aren't people saying that they need to know here? So that's my plan. That's my plan.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love the unconventional interview, obviously, because we're on Voice of Supply Chain, and I want to know what you wanted to be when you're a kid and what your innermost hopes and dreams are. So we're not talking about, supply chain as a practitioner, but as the voice of supply chain. I think that you most certainly represent a really strong voice in supply chain, and one that is going to carry us forward. And I love your message of the time is now. Like our time is diminishing quickly.
It is.
So
it is.
It's up to us right now.
I might not aspire to be president of the United States, but I am working with governments now, which is really interesting. And part of, over the years, when you reach a certain age and you look back, you don't know how everything's connected, but it is. Like everything happens for a reason. There are no coincidences. And I think in working with governments now, I've learned diplomacy. So I'm still a rebel. I still have rebel ideas. I still show up as my authentic self, true to my values and the change and impact I hope to have in the world. But maybe I have a little bit more diplomacy now in how I can address and convey really difficult topics to various stakeholders. I don't know that I had that skill when I started. And you need that in government, right? You need that in government. Change is slow, change is hard. There's a lot of moving parts. And if anyone is listening and they work in US government, I would love to meet you. I do have a couple colleagues. There's one person in particular that I mentored who's in a very high ranking position in the US government. And I have always envisioned, how can I help folks on the ground right now who are grappling with some really tough decisions? We know what's happening in Minnesota. We know what's happening in Chicago. Now it's happening in Maryland. And I want to be a force for change and also be a helping hand and heart. So reach out to me if I can help in any way.
Okay. Well, you guys, you heard it here from Sheri. She's DMs are open. Anybody in, I'm sure anybody in supply chain that is looking for resource for help, especially if you're in government. Sounds like there's some urgency there. And I have to say a massive thank you, Sheri, for coming on and sharing a different side that we don't normally see on LinkedIn, the personal side of you, not just the professional side. And so thank you for being willing to share all the details of your life in this, short hour that we've had.
Thank you so much for the inclusion, and thank you for what you do and giving voice and power to the truth that needs to be shared, and also from the mouths of women, women in our domain, and women that might not necessarily be given the chance. So I really appreciate everything that you all are doing.
It's been my absolute pleasure. And if anybody watching, if you aren't following Sheri on LinkedIn, do it now. Go start listening to her podcasts. Incredible stuff, very enlightening. This is a big year. This is the year to listen if you haven't already. As she said, the time is now. And you can watch this episode again in the replay here on LinkedIn, or you can go to the ISM New Jersey YouTube page and watch this episode and any other that you want to catch up on anytime. There's some really good ones in there. I'll be putting a highlight reel together pretty soon. And come back next month. We're going to be talking to Phil Eidson of The Art of Procurement, the
wonderful.
godfather of procurement podcast media. So I hope to see you there. And huge thank you to Kathy Pernish. Like you said at the top of the hour, she's the one in the background helping us make all of this possible. And just thanks for watching. Appreciate all of you. I'm Katherine McCleery, and this is Voice of Supply Chain. I hope to see you all again next time.
Bye, everyone.